The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in September 1878, and Catherine Reynolds read it 3 times before her hands stopped trembling enough to set it down on the scarred wooden table of the Philadelphia boarding house, where she had been living for the past 6 months. Catherine stared at the words until they blurred. A husband, California. A ranch outside Downieville. She pressed her fingers against her temples and tried to breathe through the tightness in her chest. The decision had been made weeks ago, when she had answered the advertisement. But seeing the actual travel arrangements made it terrifyingly real. She was 23 years old, and she was going to marry a stranger named Cole Donovan, because staying in Philadelphia meant eventually running out of money and options. And she had promised herself she would never be that desperate again. The other women in the boarding house whispered about mail-order brides with a mixture of pity and fascination, but Catherine did not care what they thought. She had learned to stop caring about many things over the past 2 years. It made life simpler, cleaner, less likely to shatter you when you least expected it. Mrs. Halloway, the boarding house keeper, found her packing that evening. The older woman stood in the doorway, her round face creased with concern. "Are you certain about this, dear? It is such a long way, and you know nothing about this man. I know he owns a cattle ranch and needs a wife. I need security. It seems a fair exchange." Catherine folded another dress and placed it carefully in her trunk. Everything she owned fit into one trunk and a carpetbag. It was remarkable how little remained after a life fell apart, but marriage should be more than an exchange. Mrs. Halloway stepped into the small room. "You are a lovely young woman with your whole life ahead of you. Surely there are other options." Catherine's hands stilled on the fabric. "Are there? Please, tell me what they are, because I have looked. I am educated enough to be unsuitable for factory work but not connected enough for a teaching position. I have no family and no references that matter. So yes, I am certain." The older woman sighed but said nothing more. What could she say? They both knew the truth of how narrow the world became for a woman alone. The train journey west took 5 days. Catherine sat with her carpetbag clutched on her lap and watched America roll past the window. Cities gave way to farmland, farmland to prairie, prairie to mountains. She tried not to think about Thomas, but the rhythmic clacking of the train wheels seemed to echo his name. Thomas, who had promised her everything. Thomas, who had taken what he wanted and left her with nothing but shame and the bitter knowledge that trust was for fools. She had not told Cole Donovan about Thomas. The letters they had exchanged over the past 2 months had been cordial and factual. He needed a wife to help run his household. She needed a home. He was 30 years old, never married, and his last housekeeper had gotten married herself and moved to Sacramento. Catherine had written that she was a decent cook, could manage a household, and had no family ties in the East. She had not mentioned that her father had died when she was 19, that her mother had passed 2 years later, or that she had been briefly engaged to a man who turned out to be already married. Some truths were better left unspoken. The stage coach from Sacramento to Downieville was worse than the train. Catherine and 3 other passengers were jostled and bounced over rough mountain roads for 2 days. One of the other passengers, a mining equipment salesman named Mr. Peters, tried to make conversation, but Catherine kept her responses brief. She had learned to hold people at a distance. It was safer that way. Downieville emerged from the Sierra Nevada mountains like something from a dream. The town nestled in a valley where 2 rivers met, surrounded by steep forested slopes. Buildings lined the main street in a haphazard fashion, some painted, most weathered to a silvery gray. Catherine could see a church steeple, a large hotel, several saloons, and various shops. Mountains rose dramatically on all sides. still dusted with early autumn snow on their highest peaks. The stagecoach pulled to a stop in front of a building with a sign that read, Downieville Hotel and Stage Station. Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. Somewhere in this town was the man she was supposed to marry. She climbed down from the coach with as much dignity as she could manage after 2 days of being rattled like dice in a cup. Her green traveling dress was creased and dusty, and she knew her dark blonde hair was struggling to stay in its pins. She must look a sight, not that it mattered. This was not a marriage based on romance. "Miss Reynolds," Catherine turned toward the voice. A man stood a few feet away, hat in his hands. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean build that spoke of hard physical work. His hair was dark brown, sun-streaked at the temples, and his eyes were a surprising gray-blue. He had a strong jaw, a straight nose, and weathered skin that came from years spent outdoors. He was, she realized with a small shock, handsome. The realization unsettled her. She had not expected that, Mr. Donovan. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Yes, madam." He took a step closer, his expression cautious, as if he too was unsure of what to make of this situation. "I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was tolerable." Catherine folded her hands in front of her, a defensive gesture she had perfected. "Thank you for meeting me." "Of course." Cole gestured toward her trunk, which the stagecoach driver had unloaded. "I have a wagon here. The ranch is about 5 miles outside of town. We can head out now, or if you would prefer to rest first, I can get you a room at the hotel." Catherine considered. The sensible thing would be to rest, to have a night to compose herself. But she wanted this over with. The waiting, the uncertainty, the moment when he would inevitably realize he had made a mistake. Better to get it done. "I would prefer to go to the ranch, if that is acceptable." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Relief, maybe, or respect. "That is fine. Let me get your things." He loaded her trunk into the back of a sturdy wagon with practiced efficiency. The wagon itself was well maintained, the horse a solid bay gelding that looked equally well cared for. Whatever else Cole Donovan might be, he was clearly not destitute. He helped her onto the wagon seat with a gentle hand under her elbow. His touch was brief, impersonal, but Catherine still tensed. Cole seemed to notice because he withdrew quickly and walked around to his own side without comment. They drove out of town in silence. Catherine watched the landscape change from settlement to wilderness. Pine trees crowded close to the narrow road, and the sound of running water was a constant companion. The air was thinner here, sharper, scented with pine and granite and something wild she could not name. "The ranch has been in operation for 8 years, Cole said finally, breaking the silence. "I have about 200 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and 3 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse. The house itself is not fancy, but it is solid. I built most of it myself." "I see." Catherine kept her gaze on the road ahead. "There is a vegetable garden that needs tending. The last housekeeper kept it up, but it has gotten away from me these past few months. If you like gardening, that is. I do not expect you to do anything you are not comfortable with. I can manage a garden." Another silence fell. Catherine could feel Cole glancing at her, but she did not turn her head. She knew what he was seeing. A woman who held herself rigid, who offered nothing warm or welcoming. She knew it was not what he had hoped for. Men always hoped for something softer. The ranch appeared gradually as they came around a bend in the road. A large barn stood to the left, painted red and clearly well maintained. Beyond it were several other outbuildings, including what must be the bunkhouse. The house itself was 2 stories, built from local timber with a wide front porch and real glass windows. It was far more substantial than Catherine had expected. "You built this yourself?" The question escaped before she could stop it. most of it, had help with the barn and the framing. Cole brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house. I know it is not much compared to what you might be used to in Philadelphia, but it is home. It is more than adequate. Catherine accepted his help down from the wagon, though she stepped away as soon as her feet touched the ground. Thank you. Cole studied her for a long moment, and Catherine had the uncomfortable feeling that he saw more than she wanted him to. But all he said was, "Let me show you inside." The interior of the house was clean and practical. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. A sturdy wooden table and chairs occupied the center, and the kitchen area along the far wall was equipped with a good iron stove. Stairs led to the second floor. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Cole said, setting her carpet bag down. "I will show you which is yours. Yours. Singular." Catherine felt something unknot slightly in her chest. She followed him up the stairs. The bedroom he showed her was at the front of the house, facing the mountains. It held a bed with a simple quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and a small wardrobe. A braided rug covered part of the wooden floor, and white curtains hung at the window. "I hope it will suit," Cole said from the doorway. "If you need anything else, just say so." "It is fine, thank you." Catherine turned to face him, steeling herself for what had to be said. "Mr. Donovan, I want to be clear about the terms of this arrangement. You need someone to manage your household, and I need security. I will fulfill my duties as your wife in all domestic matters. But I would prefer if the marriage remained." She paused, searching for the right word. Practical. Cole's expression did not change, but something shuddered in his eyes. "I understand. I did not mean to be indelicate. I simply believe in clarity. Clarity is good." He nodded slowly. "For what it is worth, Miss Reynolds, I did not bring you all this way to force any kind of situation you are not comfortable with. We can take this as slow as you need." Catherine had not expected that. Men in her experience were not patient creatures. They wanted what they wanted and took it when they could. "I appreciate that. The ceremony is set for tomorrow afternoon, if that is still acceptable to you. Pastor Williams will perform it here at the ranch. Just a simple service. My foreman, Jack Morrison, and his wife Mary will stand as witnesses. Tomorrow. In less than 24 hours she would be married to this stranger." Catherine took a deep breath and nodded. "That will be fine." Cole lingered a moment longer, as if he wanted to say something else. But he only nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Catherine sat down on the edge of the bed and allowed herself a moment of weakness. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs and stared at the unfamiliar room that would be hers. She was doing the right thing, the practical thing. In the morning she would marry Cole Donovan, and she would have security and a place in the world again. It was more than many women had. She did not let herself cry. Crying was pointless. That evening, Cole knocked on her door and invited her down for supper. Catherine had changed into a simpler dress and repinned her hair. She descended the stairs to find the table set for 2, and something that smelled surprisingly good coming from the stove. "I am not much of a cook," Cole admitted, ladling stew into bowls, "but I can manage the basics. Tomorrow you can take over the kitchen if you like." They ate in awkward silence. The stew was actually quite good, hearty and well seasoned. Catherine was hungrier than she had realized. She had barely eaten during the journey. "Tell me about the ranch," she said finally, because the silence was becoming oppressive. "What does the day-to-day work involve?" Cole seemed to relax slightly at the neutral topic. "This time of year, we are mostly preparing for winter. Making sure we have enough hay stored, checking the herds, repairing equipment and buildings. Come spring, there will be calving, and then we drive some of the cattle to market in Sacramento. It is hard work, but it is good work. And your ranch hands. You said there are 3. Jack Morrison is my foreman. He has been with me for 6 years. Good man, knows cattle. His wife Mary lives in town but visits regularly. Then there are 2 younger hands, Pete and Sam. They are brothers, hard workers, good boys. Catherine nodded, filing away the information. What will you need from me? Besides the cooking and household management. Cole set down his spoon and looked at her directly. Miss Reynolds, I will be honest with you, I need a partner. Someone who can help make this place a home, not just a ranch. I spend long days out working the land, and I need to know that there is someone here keeping things running. But more than that. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I would like to think that someday this could be more than just a practical arrangement. I understand that you have your reservations, and I respect that, but I am a patient man. The statement should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like a warning. Catherine had built her walls high and strong for good reason, and she had no intention of letting them down. Not for Cole Donovan, no matter how kind his eyes were or how gentle his voice. I will be a good wife to you, she said carefully. I will manage your home and fulfill my obligations. That is all I can promise. That is enough for now. But the way he said it suggested he hoped for more eventually. After supper, Catherine insisted on washing the dishes. It gave her something to do with her hands, a task to focus on. Cole disappeared outside to check on the horses, giving her space. She appreciated that, even as part of her wondered why he was being so considerate. In her experience, men were not considerate without wanting something in return. She was drying the last plate when she heard voices outside. Through the window, she could see Cole talking with another man by the barn. The man was older, weathered with a graying beard. Jack Morrison, probably. They were too far away for her to hear what they were saying. But at one point, the older man glanced toward the house, and Catherine stepped back from the window instinctively. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Catherine stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about what tomorrow would bring. She had done harder things. She had survived her mother's death, Thomas's betrayal, 6 months of scraping by in Philadelphia. She could survive this. The wedding took place the following afternoon in the main room of the house. Pastor Williams was a kind-faced man in his 50s who did not ask intrusive questions. Jack Morrison and his wife Mary stood as witnesses. Mary was a pleasant woman in her 40s who hugged Catherine warmly and told her how glad she was that Cole would finally have someone to look after him. Catherine wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton with simple trim. Cole wore clean trousers, a pressed shirt, and a jacket. He had shaved and combed his hair, and he looked almost nervous. It made him seem younger, more vulnerable. The ceremony was brief. Catherine spoke her vows in a steady voice, looking at Cole's shoulder rather than his eyes. When it came time for Cole to kiss her, he leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not pull away. His lips brushed hers gently, briefly, a kiss that held promise rather than demand. "Congratulations," Pastor Williams said, beaming. "Mr. and Mrs. Donovan, Mrs. Donovan." Catherine Reynolds no longer existed. She was Catherine Donovan now, wife to a cattle rancher in the California mountains. The thought made her feel unmoored, as if she might float away entirely. Mary had brought a cake, and they shared it along with coffee. Jack regaled them with stories about Cole's early days on the ranch, the mistakes he had made, the lessons he had learned. Cole took the ribbing good-naturedly, even laughing at himself. Catherine watched him and tried to reconcile this easygoing man with her expectations. When the guests finally left, the house fell quiet. Catherine and Cole stood in the main room, suddenly alone, suddenly married, suddenly uncertain. Well, Cole said finally. "I suppose that is that." "Yes." Catherine folded her hands. "I should start on supper. You do not have to. We still have cake." "I do not mind." She needed something to do, some task to keep her hands and mind occupied. Cole watched her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I will go check on the evening chores." He left, and Catherine moved to the kitchen area. She explored the pantry and found it reasonably well stocked. She could work with this. Cooking was something she understood, something with clear rules and predictable outcomes. Unlike everything else in her life, the days settled into a routine. Catherine woke early, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, tended the vegetable garden, and cooked the meals. Cole worked the ranch from dawn until dusk. They ate breakfast and supper together, mostly in silence. He always thanked her for the food, always asked if she needed anything, always maintained a careful distance. It should have been a relief. It was what she wanted. But something about his patient silence began to gnaw at her. 2 weeks after the wedding, Jack Morrison's wife Mary came to visit. She brought fresh eggs and warm bread and an obvious determination to befriend Catherine. "I know this must be such an adjustment for you," Mary said, settling herself at the kitchen table while Catherine made tea. "Coming all this way to marry a man you never met. That takes courage." "It takes desperation," Catherine said before she could stop herself. Then she flushed. "Forgive me. I did not mean to sound ungrateful." "There is no need to apologize. I came west myself 20 years ago, though not as a mail-order bride. I understand what it is like to start over in a new place." Mary accepted the tea with a smile. "Cole is a good man, you know, one of the best I have known." "I am sure he is." Catherine sat down across from her. "He has been alone a long time. Oh, he has had his share of women interested, of course. Half the unmarried women in Downieville set their caps at him at one point or another. But he never seemed interested. Until he placed that advertisement, I was starting to think he would end up a confirmed bachelor." Catherine sipped her tea. "Why did he place the advertisement?" "If he had options here." Mary hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I think Cole wanted someone who would choose this life deliberately, not someone who would try to change him or the ranch. He loves this land, this work. He needed someone who could understand that. I understand working hard. I understand practical arrangements." "Is that what you see this as, a practical arrangement?" The question was gentle but pointed. Catherine set down her teacup. "What else should it be? We barely know each other. But you could get to know each other if you let yourself. Cole is not the kind of man to force anything, but I can see that he cares for you already. The way he looks at you when you are not watching, the way he speaks about you." Mary reached across the table and squeezed Catherine's hand. "I know you have your reasons for keeping him at arm's length. I will not pry, but do not punish him for whatever someone else did to you." The words hit harder than they should have. Catherine withdrew her hand. "I have not said anything about my past. You did not have to. I recognize that look in your eyes. I had it myself once before I met Jack." Mary's smile turned sad. "Someone hurt you badly, but Cole is not that person." After Mary left, Catherine stood at the kitchen window and watched the mountains. The aspens were turning gold, painting bright patches across the dark green of the pines. It was beautiful here in a way that made her chest ache. Everything was so big, so open. There was nowhere to hide. That evening, Cole came in for supper and found the table set with more care than usual. Catherine had made roast chicken with vegetables from the garden, and she had even baked biscuits. She was not sure why she had gone to the extra effort. Mary's words had unsettled her. "This looks wonderful," Cole said, genuine pleasure in his voice. "Thank you." They ate in their usual near silence, but Catherine found herself watching him. He had strong hands, scarred from years of hard work. He ate with good manners but without pretension. When he caught her looking, he smiled tentatively. "Mary stopped by today," Catherine said abruptly. "I hope that was all right. She means well, though I know she can be a bit much." She was kind. Catherine cut a piece of chicken with more precision than necessary. "She told me you had many women interested in you in town. She seemed surprised you sent away for a bride instead." Cole set down his fork. "Did she now? Why did you send away for a bride, I mean?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because I did not want games or expectations. The women Mary was referring to, they wanted a husband who would take them to dances and socials. They wanted a different life than this one. I wanted someone who would choose this life because they wanted it, not because they were settling for it. And you thought a mail-order bride would want this life?" Catherine could not keep the skepticism from her voice. "I thought a mail-order bride would understand the terms. I was honest in my advertisement. I wanted someone who knew what they were agreeing to." He looked at her directly. "But I will admit, Catherine, I hoped for more than just a business arrangement. I hoped that maybe over time we could build something real." The use of her first name startled her. He always called her Catherine now, not Miss Reynolds, but somehow tonight it sounded more intimate. "I told you what I could offer," she said, hating how defensive she sounded. "I know. And I am not asking you for more than you can give. I am just saying that the door is open whenever you are ready to walk through it." He picked up his fork again. "Now, tell me what you think of the garden. I noticed you have been working out there quite a bit." The change of subject was deliberate and kind. They spent the rest of the meal talking about safe things. The garden, the approaching winter, the ranch. But Catherine went to bed that night with her carefully constructed peace disturbed. October brought cold mornings and the first real frost. Catherine woke one morning to find ice crystals on the inside of her window. She dressed quickly and went downstairs to find Cole already stoking the fire in the main room. "Winter comes fast up here," he said by way of greeting. "We will need to make sure you have warm enough clothes. I can take you into town next week. I have sufficient clothing. Catherine, I saw what you brought. Those Philadelphia dresses will not hold up to a Sierra winter." He straightened from the fireplace. "This is not charity. You are my wife. Let me provide for you, my wife." The words should not have affected her, but they did. She nodded slowly. "Thank you." The trip to town the following week was the first time Catherine had left the ranch since her arrival. Sitting beside Cole on the wagon seat, she watched the familiar road wind through the mountains. The aspens were nearly bare now, their golden leaves carpeting the ground. Downieville was busier than it had been a month ago. Cole explained that miners came down from the high country as winter approached, seeking warmer quarters and supplies. The streets were crowded with men and wagons, and the sound of hammering echoed from several buildings being winterized. Cole took her to the general store, a large establishment that seemed to carry everything from farming equipment to delicate china. The proprietor, Mr. Henderson, greeted Cole warmly and looked at Catherine with frank curiosity. "So this is the bride we heard about," Mr. Henderson said. "Welcome to Downieville, Mrs. Donovan. Cole is a good customer. We will treat you right." Cole guided her to the section with women's clothing. "Pick out what you need. Warm dresses, a good coat, boots, whatever you think will get you through the winter." Catherine looked at the prices and hesitated. "Cole, this is quite expensive. We can afford it." He must have seen something in her face because his voice gentled. "Catherine, I am not a poor man. The ranch does well. Let me take care of this." She selected items carefully, still trying to be economical. But Cole kept adding things to the pile: woolen stockings, a heavy cloak, lined gloves, a warmer nightgown. When she protested, he simply shook his head. "You are going to freeze in what you have. Humor me." While Mr. Henderson tallied their purchases, Mary Morrison appeared in the store. "Catherine, how wonderful to see you in town. Cole is finally bringing you around, I see." "Hello, Mary." Catherine found herself genuinely pleased to see the older woman. "We are having a barn dance next Saturday to celebrate the harvest. You must come, both of you." Mary looked at Cole pointedly. "I know you usually avoid these things, Cole Donovan, but you cannot keep your bride hidden away on that ranch forever." Cole shifted uncomfortably. "I do not know, Mary. It would be nice," Catherine heard herself say. Both Mary and Cole looked at her in surprise. She was surprised herself. But the thought of an evening with other people, with music and life, suddenly appealed. "If you do not mind, that is." "Of course I do not mind." Cole smiled, and it transformed his face. "We will be there." The barn dance was held at a large ranch owned by the Sawyer family about 3 miles from town. When Catherine and Cole arrived, lanterns hung from the rafters of a huge barn, and a small group of musicians were tuning their instruments. Tables laden with food lined one wall, and people milled about in their best clothes. Catherine had worn one of her nicer dresses from Philadelphia, a green silk that brought out her eyes. She had taken extra care with her hair, though she could not have said why. When she had come downstairs, Cole had stared at her for a long moment before saying simply, "You look beautiful." The compliment had flustered her more than it should have. Now, entering the barn with Cole's hand at her elbow, Catherine felt suddenly shy. People turned to look at them, curiosity evident on their faces. She was the new bride, the mail order woman from back east. She could practically hear them wondering what she was like, whether she would fit in, whether the marriage would last. But Mary swept down on them immediately, pulling Catherine into introductions. She met the Sawyers, the Johnsons, the Martinez family, and a dozen others whose names blurred together. Everyone was friendly, welcoming even though Catherine could feel their assessment. She kept her responses polite and brief, the way she always did with strangers. The music started and couples moved onto the improvised dance floor. Cole stood beside her, nursing a cup of punch, clearly uncomfortable with the social gathering. "You dance?" Catherine asked. He looked at her in surprise. Not well. I have not danced in a very long time. Not since Thomas." They had danced together at a party in Philadelphia, and he had held her close and whispered promises in her ear. All lies. Cole must have seen something on her face because he gently touched her arm. "Are you all right?" "Fine." She forced a smile. "Just remembering things I would rather forget." He studied her for a moment, then held out his hand. "Dance with me." Catherine looked at his outstretched hand. She could refuse. She could maintain her distance, keep her walls intact. But something in his patient gray-blue eyes made her take his hand. Cole led her onto the dance floor as the musicians struck up a waltz. He was telling the truth about not dancing well, but he was competent enough. Catherine followed his lead, hyper-aware of his hand at her waist, his rough palm against hers. They moved together awkwardly at first, then with increasing ease. "You are tense," Cole said quietly. "I am dancing with my husband, whom I have been married to for a month, whom I still barely know." The words came out sharper than she intended. "Then tell me something about yourself, something real." "Why?" "Because I want to know you, Catherine. Not just the woman who cooks my meals and keeps my house. I want to know who you really are." The request caught her off guard. She stumbled slightly, and Cole's hand tightened at her waist, steadying her. They continued to move to the music, and Catherine felt something crack in her chest, some small piece of the wall she had built so carefully. "I used to love dancing," she said finally. "My father taught me when I was young. He said a lady should know how to move with grace." "Your father sounds like he was a good man." "He was. He died when I was 19, pneumonia. It happened very fast." The memory still hurt, even after 4 years. My mother never recovered from losing him. She tried, but it was like part of her died too. She followed him 2 years later. Cole's hand pressed gently against her back, a gesture of comfort. I am sorry. After she died, I thought I would be all right. I had a small inheritance, and I was engaged to a man I believed loved me. His name was Thomas, and he was charming and attentive, and I trusted him completely. Catherine heard herself saying things she had never told anyone. He told me we would marry as soon as he sorted out some business affairs. In the meantime, he said we should act as husband and wife already. That we should not wait since we were already committed to each other. She felt Cole tense but continued. I was a fool. I believed him. I gave him what he wanted, and then I found out he was already married, had been for 5 years. I was just his bit of fun on the side. Catherine. Cole stopped dancing. They stood in the middle of the floor, other couples swirling around them. That was not your fault, was it not? I should have been smarter. I should have seen through him. He was the one who lied. He was the one who betrayed you. Cole's voice was fierce. You trusted someone you loved. There is no shame in that. Catherine realized she was trembling. I swore I would never be that foolish again. I swore I would never let anyone close enough to hurt me like that. Understanding dawned in Cole's eyes. Is that what I am? Someone you are keeping at a distance because you are afraid I will hurt you. You asked for honesty. Cole took her hand and led her off the dance floor, out of the barn, into the cool night air. The music continued behind them, but out here there was space to breathe. He turned to face her, his expression serious. I cannot prove to you that I am not like him. I cannot show you in one moment that you can trust me, but I can promise you this. I will never lie to you. I will never betray you. And I will be as patient as I need to be while you figure that out for yourself. Catherine stared at him. Why? Why would you be patient with me? You could have married any number of women who would have given you a real marriage, a warm wife. Why settle for someone who cannot give you that? Because I do not want those other women. I want you. He said it simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. From the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, so proper and contained and clearly terrified but pretending not to be, I wanted you. I want to know everything about you. I want to hear you laugh. I want to see you without all those walls up. I want whatever you are willing to give me, even if it takes years for you to give it. Something in Catherine's chest squeezed painfully. Cole, I do not know if I can be what you want. Then just be yourself. That is enough. They stood in the darkness, the sound of fiddle music drifting from the barn, and Catherine felt something fundamental shift. She was not ready to drop her walls entirely. But maybe, just maybe, she could lower them slightly. Thank you for telling me that, she said finally. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me about Thomas. Cole offered his arm. Should we go back inside, or would you rather head home? Home. The word felt strange but not unwelcome. I think I would like to go home. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet, comfortable, almost companionable. When they arrived home and Cole helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingered at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. Good night, Catherine. Good night, Cole. That night, lying in her bed, Catherine thought about his words. I want you. No one had ever said that to her with such simple honesty. Thomas had said pretty words, flowery declarations, but they had all been manipulation. Cole's straightforward statement carried more weight than all of Thomas's poetry. She was not ready to trust him. Not yet. But maybe, eventually, she could try. November brought snow. Catherine woke one morning to find the world transformed, everything blanketed in white. Cole found her standing on the front porch, staring at the mountains in wonder. First real snow of the season, he said, coming to stand beside her. It is beautiful, is it not? It is. Catherine had seen snow in Philadelphia, of course, but nothing like this. Here the snow seemed to stretch endlessly, covering the landscape in pristine white. How much will we get? Depends on the winter. Some years we get 6 feet or more. We will be snowed in here at the ranch for weeks at a time. Are you prepared for that? Catherine looked at him. Being snowed in with you? Yes, she considered. The thought would have terrified her 2 months ago. Now it merely made her nervous. I suppose I will have to be. Cole smiled. I suppose you will. The snow continued on and off for days. Cole and his ranch hands worked to make sure the cattle were cared for, that hay was distributed, that everything was secure for the long winter ahead. Catherine threw herself into household tasks. She baked bread, preserved the last of the garden vegetables, organized the pantry, cleaned every corner of the house. She was trying to avoid thinking about how close the walls felt with the snow piling up outside, but she could not avoid Cole. They were together in the house more now that the weather kept him from working as long hours. He read by the fire in the evenings while she sewed or knitted. Sometimes he told her stories about the ranch, about his first years in California, about the challenges he had overcome. Catherine listened, asking occasional questions, slowly building a picture of the man she had married. He was patient, just as he had promised. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. When she retreated into silence, he let her. When she occasionally opened up, he listened without judgment. Slowly, so gradually she almost did not notice, Catherine began to relax around him. One evening in late November, a blizzard hit. The wind howled around the house and snow piled against the windows. Catherine stood by the kitchen window, watching the storm with a mixture of awe and anxiety. It is quite something, is it not? Cole came to stand beside her. It is so much, so wild. That is the mountains. Everything is more intense here, he paused. Does it frighten you? Catherine considered the question honestly. A little, but also it is beautiful, like you. She turned to look at him in surprise. Cole met her gaze steadily. You are beautiful, Catherine. I do not say it enough, but you are, and not just your face. The way you have built this house into a home. The way you care for the garden even when you think no one is watching. The way you are so careful with everything, like you are afraid it might break. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I wish you knew that you do not have to be so careful here. Not with me. Catherine's breath caught. His hand lingered near her face, warm and gentle. She should step back. She should maintain her distance. But instead she leaned slightly into his touch. I do not know how to be any other way. Then we will figure it out together. Cole's thumb brushed her cheek, a gesture so tender it made her throat tight. No pressure, no expectations, just us figuring it out. The storm raged outside, but inside the house it felt warm and safe. Catherine looked at Cole, really looked at him, and allowed herself to see not just a stranger she had married, but a man who had been nothing but kind to her. A man who asked for nothing but offered everything. A man who might possibly be worth the risk. Cole, she whispered. Yes, would you kiss me? Not because we are married, not out of obligation, but because you want to. His eyes darkened. Catherine, I have wanted to kiss you properly since the day we met, but I need to know you want it too. Really want it? In answer, Catherine rose on her toes and kissed him. It was nothing like their brief wedding kiss. This was real and deep and full of all the longing she had been trying to ignore. Cole pulled her closer, one hand cupping her face, the other at her waist. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was worth savoring. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Catherine rested her forehead against his chest. That was, she started, then did not know how to finish. Yes, Cole agreed. His arms tightened around her. Catherine, I need you to know, I will not rush you. If that is all you want right now, just kissing, that is fine. But Catherine realized it was not all she wanted. She was tired of being afraid, tired of letting Thomas's betrayal dictate her life. Cole was not Thomas. Cole had been patient and kind, and everything she had not known she needed. "I want more," she said against his chest. Cole pulled back to look at her. "Are you certain?" "I am terrified, but yes, I am certain." He kissed her again, slower this time, giving her every chance to change her mind. When she did not, he took her hand and led her upstairs. Later, lying in Cole's bed with his arm around her, Catherine stared at the ceiling and tried to process what had happened. It had been different with Cole. Tender where Thomas had been rough. Patient where Thomas had been hurried. Cole had made her feel cherished rather than used. "Are you all right?" Cole's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes," she turned to look at him. "I am more than all right. I am just surprised." "Surprised by what?" "By how different it was, by how good it felt." She paused. "Thomas, he never made me feel like you just did." Cole's jaw tightened. "Then he was a fool and a bastard, and I am glad you will never have to settle for that again." Catherine found herself smiling. "Are you always this gallant after seducing your wife?" "I do not know. You are my first wife." He grinned. "Did I seduce you? I rather thought you seduced me." She laughed, and the sound surprised her. When was the last time she had genuinely laughed? Cole looked delighted. "There it is. I have been trying to make you laugh for 2 months. I do not laugh easily. I noticed. I will consider it my personal mission to change that." He pulled her closer. "Stay here tonight. In my bed." The request was tentative, giving her room to refuse, but Catherine did not want to go back to her own cold bedroom. She wanted to stay here in this warm bed with this man who had somehow slipped past her defenses. "Yes," she said. "I will stay." December was bitterly cold but oddly peaceful. Catherine and Cole settled into a new rhythm, more intimate, more connected. She moved her things into his bedroom, and they spent long winter evenings talking by the fireplace or lying together in the warmth of their bed. Catherine found herself looking forward to the sound of Cole's boots on the porch, to the way he greeted her when he came in from the cold, to the quiet contentment of their evenings together. She began to tell him more about herself, her childhood in Philadelphia, her love of reading, her mother's garden, the dreams she had once had for her life before they were shattered. Cole listened to everything, asking thoughtful questions, never dismissing her experiences. In return, he shared his own history. He had come west at 22 with nothing but determination and a little bit of money saved. He had worked for other ranchers first, learning everything he could, and then had bought this land and built the ranch from nothing. It had been hard, lonely work, but he had never regretted it. "Why did you wait so long to marry?" Catherine asked one evening. They were curled together on the sofa, a quilt pulled over them, watching the fire. "I was building something. I did not want to bring a wife into a half-finished life. I wanted to be able to provide properly." He played with her hair absently. "And I suppose I was waiting for the right person. The women around here are fine, but they wanted something different, someone different. I needed someone who would understand this life. And you think I understand it. I think you are learning to. And I think you are stronger than you give yourself credit for." He kissed the top of her head. "You came all this way, married a stranger, started over in a completely new place. That takes courage, or foolishness." "Courage," he said firmly. "And I am grateful for it every day." Christmas came quietly. Catherine made a special meal, and Cole surprised her with a present, a beautiful shawl he had ordered from Sacramento months ago, before she even arrived. The fact that he had thought of it so early touched her deeply. "I did not get you anything," she said, running her fingers over the soft wool. "You gave me yourself. That is more than enough." Cole wrapped the shawl around her shoulders. Though if you want to give me something else, you could call me by my name without hesitation. You still pause sometimes, like you are not sure you have the right. It was true. Catherine still occasionally struggled with the intimacy of using his first name so casually. It felt presumptuous somehow, even though they were married, even though they shared a bed. Cole, she said deliberately. My husband, the man I am learning to love. His eyes widened. Learning to love, Catherine had not meant to say it so plainly, but there was no taking it back now. Yes, I do not know if I am there yet, but I think I might be getting close. Cole pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Take all the time you need. I already know how I feel about you. You do, Catherine. I fell in love with you somewhere between your arrival and now. Maybe it was the way you tackled that garden with such determination. Maybe it was the first time I made you laugh. Maybe it was the way you look in the morning when you think no one is watching. I do not know exactly when it happened, but I love you. The declaration should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. I think I might love you too, she whispered. I am still afraid. But I think I love you anyway. That is enough. More than enough. They spent the rest of Christmas Day in quiet celebration, just the two of them. Catherine realized she was happier than she had been in years. The walls around her heart had not crumbled entirely, but they were definitely cracking. January brought more snow and bitterly cold temperatures. The ranch hands only came to the main house for meals now, eating quickly before returning to the warmth of the bunkhouse. Catherine and Cole were essentially alone, snowed in together, and Catherine found she did not mind. She had been afraid of the isolation, afraid of being trapped. But with Cole, she felt free. One evening, Cole was reading a book by the fire while Catherine knitted a scarf. The domesticity of the scene struck her suddenly. This was what marriage should be, this quiet companionship, this easy coexistence. Why had she thought it would be impossible? What are you thinking about? Cole asked, not looking up from his book. How different this is from what I expected. Now he did look up. Good different or bad different, very good different. Catherine set down her knitting. Cole, I need to tell you something. He closed his book, giving her his full attention. All right. When I came here, I was so broken. I thought I was past it, that I had dealt with what Thomas did to me. But I had not. I had just built walls and pretended that was the same as healing. You could have let me stay behind those walls. You could have accepted the bargain I offered and left it at that. But you did not. You were patient and kind, and you waited for me to feel safe enough to let you in. Her voice thickened. I do not think I have thanked you for that. Cole moved to sit beside her, taking her hands. Catherine, you do not need to thank me for caring about you. That is not something you have to earn. I know that now, but I did not know it before. She looked at their joined hands. I love you, Cole Donovan. I am not learning to love you. I do love you, completely. And it terrifies me, but I needed you to know. Cole's face lit up with such joy that it made her heart squeeze. He pulled her into his lap, kissing her deeply. I love you too, so much, and I promise you, Catherine, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret trusting me. I know, she said simply, and she realized she meant it. She trusted him. The walls around her heart had finally tumbled down. February brought a thaw. The snow began to melt, and the sound of running water was everywhere as streams and rivers swelled. Cole said they would be able to get to town soon, and Catherine realized she actually missed seeing other people. She had been so focused on her isolation that she had not noticed when it stopped feeling like isolation and started feeling like home. Mary Morrison visited as soon as the roads were passable, bringing fresh bread and gossip from town. She took one look at Catherine's face and smiled broadly. Well, that is a different woman from the one I met in September. You look happy, Catherine. I am happy. Catherine poured tea for both of them, surprisingly so. Not surprising to me. I told you Cole was a good man. Mary accepted the tea. So, tell me everything. How was your first winter snowed in together? Catherine felt herself blush. It was good, better than I expected, Mary laughed. I can see that, you are glowing. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Have you told him you love him yet? Yes, actually, at Christmas. And he said he loved me too. He has been saying it for a while, actually. I was just the slow one. Catherine smiled. I am not sure what I did to deserve him, Mary. I came here so determined to keep my heart safe. But he was so patient. He waited for me to be ready. That is Cole. Patient as the day is long when it matters. Mary squeezed Catherine's hand. I am so glad it worked out. Jack and I were worried those first few weeks. You seemed so unhappy. I was terrified of everything, of being hurt again, of trusting again, of hoping again. Catherine looked out the window at the melting snow. But Cole made me feel safe, and once I felt safe, the rest followed. They talked for another hour, and when Mary left, she hugged Catherine tightly. You are good for him, you know. Cole has been alone too long. He needed someone like you. After Mary left, Catherine thought about those words. She had been so focused on what Cole was giving her that she had not thought about what she might be giving him. But she could see it now. He smiled more, laughed more, seemed more settled, more content. She was not the only one who had been lonely. Spring arrived slowly, patches of bare ground appearing first on the south-facing slopes. Cole said it would be another month before the high country was passable, but the ranch came alive again. Cattle grew restless, eager for fresh grass. The ranch hands emerged from their winter hibernation to start preparations for calving season. Catherine threw herself into planting the garden. This year, she knew what she was doing. She had learned from her mistakes the previous fall, and she was determined to make the garden productive. Cole helped when he could, though he was busy with 100 other tasks. One afternoon in April, Catherine was working in the garden when she felt a wave of dizziness. She sat back on her heels, pressing a hand to her forehead. It passed after a moment, but it left her unsettled. She had been feeling off for the past week, vaguely nauseated in the mornings, more tired than usual. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. She counted back, trying to remember her last monthly. It had been in February. She was late, very late. She sat in the garden, dirt on her hands, and tried to process what this meant. A baby. She might be carrying Cole's baby. The thought filled her with a strange mixture of joy and terror. That night after supper, Catherine sat across from Cole and tried to find the words. He noticed her nervousness immediately. What is wrong? You have been quiet all evening. Nothing is wrong, at least I do not think it is wrong, but I need to tell you something. She took a deep breath. Cole, I think I might be with child. He went very still. You think I am late. And I have been feeling unwell in the mornings. I cannot be certain yet, but all the signs point to it. She watched his face anxiously. Are you angry? Angry? Cole's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. Catherine, why would I be angry? This is wonderful news. He came around the table and pulled her into his arms. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. She had been so afraid he would think it was too soon, that they were not ready, but his joy was unmistakable. You are happy? She asked. Happy does not begin to cover it. You are giving me a family, Catherine, an actual family. He pulled back to look at her. Are you happy? I am terrified, she admitted. But yes, I am happy too. The pregnancy progressed and Catherine's condition became undeniable. Her stomach rounded, and she felt the first flutters of movement in June. Cole was endlessly solicitous, worrying over her constantly, trying to keep her from doing too much work. Catherine found it both touching and irritating. I am pregnant, not dying, she told him one morning when he tried to insist she rest instead of working in the garden. I know, but I want you to be careful. I want you both to be safe." He placed his hand on her growing belly, his expression soft. "I cannot believe this is happening." "Neither can I, honestly." Catherine covered his hand with hers. "Cole, I have been thinking. If something goes wrong during the birth, I want you to promise me something." "Do not talk like that, please. I need to say this. If you have to choose between me and the baby, choose me. Promise me." Cole's face went pale. "Catherine, nothing is going to go wrong. We do not know that. Women die in childbirth all the time, and I need to know that if the worst happens, you will make sure I survive. I do not want you to save the baby at my expense." She gripped his hand tightly. "Promise me." "I promise." His voice was rough. "But you are both going to be fine. I will make sure of it." Mary Morrison became a frequent visitor as Catherine's pregnancy advanced. She brought advice, practical supplies, and calm reassurance. She had birthed 4 children of her own and helped deliver a dozen more. Catherine found herself relying on Mary's experience and steady presence. "You are going to be fine," Mary told her in August when Catherine's anxiety was running high. "You are young and healthy. Your baby is active." All good signs. But things can go wrong. They can. But they usually do not, and I will be here with you the whole time. I have brought more babies into this world than I can count. We will get through this together. Catherine wanted to believe her. But having experienced how quickly life could change, how fast happiness could be ripped away, she could not quite allow herself to relax. Cole seemed to sense her fear. He held her every night, talking to their baby, telling the child stories about the ranch, about California, about all the things they would do together. Catherine would close her eyes and let his voice wash over her, trying to believe in the future he painted. The baby came in early September, almost exactly a year after Catherine had arrived in Downieville. The labor started in the afternoon, and Mary was summoned immediately. Cole paced the downstairs while Catherine labored upstairs with Mary coaching her through each contraction. It was hard and painful and terrifying, but Mary's calm presence kept Catherine grounded. "You are doing wonderfully. Just keep breathing. That is it. You are so close now." The baby was born just after midnight, a healthy boy with a strong cry and a thick shock of dark hair. Mary cleaned him up and placed him in Catherine's arms. Catherine stared down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by a rush of love so intense it took her breath away. Cole burst into the room moments later, his face wild with worry. "Catherine, are you all right?" "I am fine. We are both fine." She smiled up at him through tears. "Come meet your son." Cole approached the bed slowly as if afraid to disturb them. When he looked down at the baby, his eyes filled with tears. "He is perfect. You are both perfect." He bent to kiss Catherine's forehead. Thank you for this." They named him James, after Cole's father. James Donovan, born on the Donovan Ranch in September 1879. Catherine held him and marveled that this tiny person was theirs, that she and Cole had created him together. The first weeks were exhausting. James was a hungry baby who needed constant feeding and attention. Catherine was grateful for Mary's help and for Cole's willingness to do whatever was needed, even changing soiled diapers without complaint. "I did not expect fatherhood to involve quite so much laundry," Cole said one morning, hanging tiny clothes on the line. Catherine laughed. "Neither did I. But look at him, Cole. He is worth it." James was asleep in a basket nearby, his little fists curled near his face. Cole looked at his son with such love that Catherine felt her heart squeeze. "I never thought I would have this," Cole said quietly. "A wife I love, a son. A real family. I used to think the ranch was enough, but this, Catherine, this is everything." Catherine moved to stand beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It is everything for me, too. A year ago I was so broken. I thought I would never be happy again, but you proved me wrong." We proved each other wrong. I thought I would have to settle for a practical arrangement. Instead, I got the love of my life. They stood together, watching their son sleep, and Catherine thought about how far she had come. She had arrived in Downieville with walls around her heart so high she thought nothing could break through. But Cole's patience, his kindness, his unwavering love had brought those walls tumbling down. And in their place had grown something beautiful: trust, love, a family. The years passed in a blur of activity and happiness. James grew into a bright, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere. Catherine had another child 2 years later, a daughter they named Emma. Emma was quieter than James, more thoughtful with her mother's green eyes and her father's steady temperament. The ranch prospered. Cole and Jack expanded the operation, buying more land, increasing the herd. Catherine's garden became legendary in the area, producing vegetables in abundance that she shared generously with neighbors. The house filled with life and laughter and love. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Cole took Catherine into town for a rare evening alone. Mary was watching the children, and Catherine and Cole had dinner at the Downieville Hotel. Afterward, they walked along the river hand in hand. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked. "Answering my advertisement, coming all this way?" Catherine looked at him in surprise. "Never." "Why would you ask that?" "I know this life is hard, isolated, not what you grew up with." "Cole Donovan, this life is exactly what I needed. You are exactly what I needed." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "You taught me how to trust again. You showed me that love does not have to hurt. You were patient when I needed patience and strong when I needed strength. I could not have asked for a better husband or a better life." Cole pulled her close. "I love you, Catherine, more today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today. I love you too, always." They stood by the river, wrapped in each other's arms, and Catherine thought about the scared woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 5 years ago. That woman had been so determined to protect herself, so certain that opening her heart would only lead to pain. But she had been wrong. Opening her heart to Cole had been the best decision of her life. The walls had tumbled down, and in their place had grown something far better. A love built on trust, patience, and partnership. A love that would last a lifetime. Years continued to pass, marked by the changing of seasons and the growth of their children. James grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch and spent every spare moment with his father, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and the land. Emma was gentler but no less determined, developing her mother's love for growing things and spending hours in the garden. When James was 8 and Emma was 6, Catherine found herself pregnant again. This time she was calmer, having been through it twice before. The baby, another boy they named William, arrived in the spring of 1886. William was a happy, easy baby who rarely fussed and smiled at everything. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Catherine ran the household with practiced efficiency, balancing motherhood with her other responsibilities. She had become a pillar of the small community around Downieville, known for her kindness and her willingness to help neighbors in need. The reserved woman who had arrived nearly 8 years ago was gone, replaced by someone who had learned to open her heart. Cole continued to thrive, both as a rancher and as a father. He was patient with the children, teaching them but never pushing. He and Catherine maintained a partnership in all things, discussing decisions together, supporting each other through challenges. One evening in the summer of 1887, after the children were in bed, Cole and Catherine sat on the front porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "You remember when you first arrived?" Cole asked, his arm around Catherine's shoulders. "You stood right there by the wagon, so stiff and proper. I thought you were going to run back to town." Catherine laughed. "I thought about it. I was terrified of you, of this place, of everything. I had convinced myself that keeping everyone at a distance was the only way to stay safe." "What changed your mind? You did. You never gave up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. You showed me that I was wrong, that love did not have to be painful, that trust was possible." She turned to look at him. "You saved me, Cole, not from poverty or hardship, though you did do that. But you saved me from myself, from the walls I had built that were keeping me from living." Cole kissed her softly. "You saved me too. I did not even realize how lonely I was until you were here. The ranch was just work before you. You made it a home. You made it mean something." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light fade from the sky. Catherine thought about the journey that had brought her here, all the pain and fear that had preceded her arrival in Downieville. She would not wish that pain on anyone, but she could acknowledge now that it had led her to exactly where she needed to be. "No regrets?" Cole asked, echoing his question from years earlier. "No regrets," Catherine confirmed. "Only gratitude." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Catherine leaned against her husband and counted her blessings. A man who loved her unconditionally, 3 healthy children, a home that was truly hers, a life that, despite its challenges, was rich with meaning and joy. The mail-order bride who had arrived with walls around her heart had found something she never expected, a love worth having. And the cowboy's patience had been rewarded with a wife who gave him everything he had hoped for and more. The story could have ended with bitterness and loneliness. Instead, it ended with love, family, and a future full of promise. Catherine had learned that sometimes the biggest risk led to the greatest reward. Sometimes trusting someone, really trusting them, was not foolishness but wisdom. And sometimes, the walls we build to protect ourselves are actually the very things keeping us from the happiness we deserve. As Catherine and Cole sat together on their porch, surrounded by the mountains they loved, with their children sleeping safely inside, they both knew they had found something precious and rare. A true partnership, a lasting love, and a home that had been built not just with wood and nails, but with patience, trust, and an unwavering commitment to each other. The wild California mountains had witnessed their journey from strangers to partners to deeply connected lovers. The ranch that Cole had built alone had become a family home, filled with the laughter of children and the warmth of a love that had overcome every obstacle. Years later, when their children were grown and starting families of their own, Catherine and Cole would sit on that same porch and watch their grandchildren play in the yard. They would share stories of the early days, of the nervous bride who stepped off the stagecoach and the patient cowboy who waited for her to let him in. "Tell us again how you met," the grandchildren would beg, and Catherine would smile at Cole before beginning the story of the mail-order bride who came to California with her heart locked away, and the cowboy whose patient love brought down every wall she had built. It was a love story that began with fear and loneliness, but ended with joy and family. It was proof that sometimes the best things in life come from taking the biggest risks. And it was a testament to the power of patience, of kindness, and of love that refuses to give up even when faced with the highest walls. Catherine and Cole Donovan lived long, happy lives together, surrounded by children and grandchildren, respected in their community, and devoted to each other until the very end. The ranch they built together continued to thrive for generations, a lasting legacy of what 2 people could create when they chose trust over fear and love over loneliness. And if, sometimes, Catherine thought back to the broken woman she had been when she first arrived in Downieville, it was only to marvel at how far she had come. The walls were long gone, crumbled to dust by Cole's patient love and her own courage to try again. In their place was a life more beautiful than she had ever imagined possible.